Okay, thank you very much. And if you're not in banking or on the financial sector, I think this will apply to everyone. If you work for a company and you're in the IT area, you guys are our partners. We depend on you heavily to go back to your companies and share this information and keep them very well aware of what's going on out there, because we're seeing a lot of money leave different companies very quickly. And I'll go over some of these slides and explain to you how this is happening. Our CEO, this is what keeps him awake at night, because the cyber type crimes that we're seeing, the data breaches, the corporate account takeovers, the business email compromises, the wire transfers that are leaving the banks, literally have the ability to bankrupt companies in a matter of minutes. So with that, my name is Jodi Selby. I'm with Bankers Trust Company. For those of you that have not heard of Bankers Trust, we are the largest locally owned financial institution in the state of Iowa. Our footprint is in Des Moines, Cedar Rapids. We have a footprint in Phoenix, Arizona. We are in Omaha. We are also up in Minnesota, South Dakota, Illinois, and I think we're getting ready to go into Colorado. So pretty much just the Midwest and then down into Arizona. I've been with Bankers Trust now just over 15 years, and I've been in the banking industry almost 25. My background is business. That's where my degree is at. And I hold 3 certifications. Anti-money laundering specialist, so I handle the anti-money laundering compliance for the bank. I also handle physical security, so general security for the bank, and then the information security for the bank. I'm the information security officer. My title is the Financial Intelligence Manager, so I manage the Financial Intelligence Department, and the people in my area do a little bit of everything. So all of the AML and anti-money laundering and information security and security. So with that, I'm going to get started and go forward. How do I? Oh, I can just do it. Yeah. So we'll talk about data breach, we'll talk about corporate account takeover, and then some other financial related crimes, some that aren't directly related to cyber, but I think that are interesting, and there are certainly threats out there that I want to share. Some of my objectives, just some general information. I'll kind of start out and get us all on the same page. If you are already aware of this information, I apologize ahead of time, but I just want us all to start out on the same page. I'll get some of the threats and some of the targets out there, the malicious software that we see in the financial industry specifically, and then some of the mitigation strategies that we try to share with our corporate customers and best practices. So just some banking 101, because I only saw a couple of hands go up when he asked about who was from the banking industry. ACH, Automated Clearinghouse. Most of us know what ACH is because that's how our payroll might go into our bank account, or that's how, if we have utility payments that we need to pay, we'll get it set up for auto deduct, and that's how it comes out of our bank account. For corporations to set up automatic clearinghouse payments, they originate those payments and they originate them in a file, and most times now they'll do that through their business internet banking sessions. Just like most of us as consumers have internet banking, businesses have internet banking as well. So they'll set those up through internet banking sessions, and their corporate files and their templates that they do through their internet banking. So keep that in mind. Just like as we all log into our internet banking and even on our mobile banking, corporations can do that just the same, and they can create these very large ACH files to do payroll, to do accounts payable. They can go out and do receivables and pull money in. So they can do these very large ACH files. Wire transfer. Wire transfer is how we move money through the wire system. And that used to be the only real way to move money and move money quickly before ACH came into the world. So we can also do wires. We can do them domestically or internationally and send money. And the great thing about ACH and wire transfers is it moves money, and it moves money really fast. And once it gets to you, it's there, it's available, and you can spend it immediately. The bad thing about ACH and wire transfers is that it moves money and it moves it fast, and once it gets there, it's available and it's gone. So it's a good and a bad thing all at the same time. And then we have the good old-fashioned cashier's check. And you know, people still move money, and even fraudulently, through a cashier's check. And what's interesting about a cashier's check is those are bank issued, and we cannot place a stop payment on those. So if you want to go in to get a cashier's check at a bank, you can certainly do that. It's guaranteed funds, but a bank cannot place a stop payment on that. We have to pay that if it comes in. So now we're all on the same page. Malicious software. Everybody in this room, I'm going to be led to believe, knows what malicious software is, knows what malware is. So how is it used in financial crime? Well, typically we see it, people have it installed on their computer, unbeknownst to them, to steal their account credentials, to steal their login credentials. And the criminals have figured out that it isn't Jodi Selby's personal account that has all the money in it. Clearly, it's not my account that has all the money in it. It's those big corporations that have the money in it. If we're going to go after something, we're going to go after a target, we're going to go after the big ones. We're going to go after those big corporations, and we're going to go after those CFOs, their account credentials that have the big money. They'll delete and steal cookies, they'll modify the HTML, take screenshots, access the victim accounts from their own IP, all of these things that the people in this room know about. How do they get there? Through Trojans, scareware, viruses, spyware, keystroke logging, phishing, spam, all of the things that the people in this room are very well aware of. Business leaders, small business owners, mid-sized business owners, employees of businesses are not aware of these things. And the criminals know that. They know that businesses can have great firewalls, they can have all of the wonderful things in place. You know, we can go back to the textbook case of Target almost 2 years ago. I mean, everybody's read about it. We all know how that happened. It happened at their vendor. That's where it started, their heating and cooling vendor. Somebody in the accounts payable area opened up an email they shouldn't have opened. That's where it started. Because the criminals knew trying to get directly into Target was going to be difficult. So where do we go? We go to a back door. Where's the back door? At the heating and cooling company. Because the heating and cooling company wasn't training their employees. Because who would think that that was going to be the back door into what at that time was the largest data breach we knew. So that's where we depend on, as a financial institution. We go out and we're educating our small to mid-sized business customers, our large corporations. They need to get out and educate their employees because that's the weakest link. We know that. The human is the weakest link. What's driving it? Social networking. You know, we all know that. Facebook and Twitter and all of that. Increased use of email, increased use of online banking, and I always tell our business customers and our consumer customers, as I'm out talking to them, is online banking safe? Yes, I think it's safe. I use it all the time. But of course, when you put something out there that's great and wonderful and really convenient for a consumer or for a business customer, it's great and convenient and wonderful for a criminal as well. The archived databases are often not encrypted. That's what we saw with TJX all those years ago. We're going to store all of this credit and debit card information, but we're not going to encrypt it. We're just going to have it there for anybody to have. Foreign rogue governments and terrorist organizations are exploiting the cyber vulnerabilities. With Sony, we saw that. And then traditional organized crime groups are adding cybercrime to their business portfolio, or just traditional white-collar crime. And I'll talk about how, I think it's the Bloods or the Crips that here at the end, how they're impacting just general white-collar crime. So account takeover. How does it happen? It came on the scene a few years ago, probably 10 to 12, maybe 14 years ago. We first started seeing account takeover. And basically what happens is an email comes in. I walk around and I say I think the root of all evil is email. I just think that's where it all, we all have to have it, but if employees would quit clicking on bad things, then bad things would quit happening. But an email comes in, generally, and somebody opens up an attachment that they're not supposed to open, or they click on a link that they're not supposed to click on, and that downloads the malware, and that malware is specifically targeting the internet banking credentials, and they want the internet banking credentials. They want to be able to get the login information. And once they get that login information, they're able to log in as that CFO or whoever is responsible for doing the internet banking in that company. And then they're able to create one of those big ACH files, or they're able to create a wire transfer file and move that money right out. And it could be, you know, if you have an ACH limit of $500,000, or you have a wire transfer limit of $10 million, that's a lot of money that can move in a really, really short period of time. So who are the targets? The Department of Defense, Department of Energy, small and mid-sized businesses, because they don't seem to have the security in place or the training. The larger ones do. The financial sector, city and county governments, school districts, construction entities, not-for-profits, But as we all know, they'll go after anybody that doesn't have sufficient security. Talked about that. We've also seen it with cashier's checks. You know, they'll send in a request for cashier's checks or counterfeit checks. You know, we go through in the financial industry, we see it's like everything else. It's waves of feast or famine. We have seen a huge influx of counterfeit checks, probably in the last 6 months. We used to not see as many, and then they spike, and now I think we see counterfeit checks. You know, Banker Stressed, we're about a $4 billion bank in assets. In the Des Moines area, we have about 14 branches. We have a couple in Cedar Rapids, one down in Phoenix. So we don't have a large branch network, but we probably see, I don't know, a couple of counterfeit checks a day. And we probably have at least one corporate customer a week that has an influx of counterfeit checks hitting. So that's a pretty big problem. So once I create this fraudulent ACH file, I'm the criminal and I've gotten the account credentials of a large corporation and I've logged in and I've created this large ACH file or all of these wire transfers, and I need to send that money somewhere. So who am I going to send it to? So I got to get it somewhere, likely here in the United States. Sometimes it goes outside the US, but I got to get it somewhere. And if it's ACH, that's all domestic. I mean, you can do international ACH transactions, but chances are it's going to be just a normal domestic ACH transaction. So that's right here in the United States. So I got to send it somewhere. So I got to find some money mules. I got to find some people here in the US that I can send this money to their bank accounts. And so if you see in the work from home ads, I'm going to work from home, or we've got the Lonely Hearts Club. I've met somebody online. I'm selling something on Craigslist. There's a whole myriad of different ways. But most times people think they're working from home and it's some very elaborate scam that all I have to do is let this money come into my bank account and then I withdraw it and I take it to Western Union and I send this money on through Western Union and I get to keep a portion of the proceeds. These are the money mules. And the systems are set up, they log in, they think they're really working for these people. They log in, they find out when the money is going to come in, how much the ACH is going to be, they go to their bank, they withdraw the money, and then they send it off Western Union. And then that money is picked up by the criminal on the other end. So, and that's exactly how I feel about money mules. Oftentimes money mules, if it sounds too good to be true, law enforcement will arrest them and pick them up because you shouldn't do something that sounds too good to be true. We run into investigations with a corporate account takeover. A lot of times the corporate account takeovers are emanating from Eastern Europe. So when that money mule does send that money, Western Union, it ends up somewhere over in Eastern Europe. And there's money mules on the other end. So there's money mules over there to pick up the money, and there may be several layers then of mules on the other end. So it's not just I pick it up and I go hand it to the kingpin. It goes through 3 or 4 different layers on the other end. So investigations are really, really frustrating. And as we all know, law enforcement here in the US, the first thing you do when you see a corporate account takeover is your first reaction is, well, let's call the FBI. I'm going to call the FBI and get them involved. And you do. You call them and they immediately come in and they go to the corporation's computer and they seize it and they start to analyze it. But their jurisdiction is the United States. Their jurisdiction isn't Romania. So then they're, dependent on their Romanian counterparts to help them with that investigation over there. And sometimes those Romanian counterparts may be corrupt, and so there's those challenges as well, or wherever it may be. So, and there's no bank accounts over there in Eastern Europe. It's not like they're going to go seize a bank account and get all the money back. It doesn't work like that. They don't have bank accounts like we do here. So a lot of frustrations when you're dealing with the investigative part. The Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council. I can't talk about banking without talking a little bit about the regulations that go along with it. We're highly regulated. And the FFIEC, that's a group of regulators. That's your FDIC, the Federal Reserve, the SEC, the OCC, all of those groups that come together into this council. And they pass regulations and guidance. And guidance generally is those are the things that are put out that financial institutions are just, it's kind of like, this is just some things that maybe you might want to follow, or things that are ideas and best practices. This particular guidance that came out on internet banking was not just suggested, it's not a regulation, but You are absolutely expected to follow it and implement it. And it originally came out in 2001, and that's when they came out and they said, look, banks, you know, this whole internet banking thing that you've got going on, we really like it. We think it's really great. Your customers seem to enjoy it. But the username and password, that's not enough. You need to find some additional layers of security. And so you started seeing things like passphrases. Pick your passphrase, you know, I love whoever. Pictures, challenge questions, all of that. That's where that came from. And then in 2005, they updated it. And they said, oh, the whole passphrase thing is good, and we like that, and we like the pictures. That looks really great, but you need to keep layering it, keep putting those layers in. So you started seeing things like tokens. Tokens put into play. We rolled out tokens at Bankers Trust. Tokens are great. You know, you have a little key fob, and you have to enter the little number that's on the key fob, and it changes every 30 seconds. And you think, well, boy, how's somebody ever going to defeat that? How do you defeat a token? We rolled them out, and within 3 or 4 months, it was defeated. So my IT security, I'm information security, not to be confused with IT security. We have the IT security group too. And my IT security manager will always say, Jodi, you can build a 50-foot wall, but they will always have a 51-foot ladder. So 2011, the guidance was updated yet again, telling us to enhance our layered security. So banks then started doing more out-of-band authentication, so you're doing the text message and the phone call, that type of thing. Risk assessments, everything's about risk assessment, assessing your risk. Anomaly detection. Not only banks are you going to layer your security, but you're going to start putting systems in place so that you can look for those ACH files and wire files that might look different than what the customer normally does. And then customer education. You're going to go out there and talk to your customers because they can't protect themselves unless they know what those threats are. Some of the vulnerabilities, I think probably most of you in this room already know this, if you are working in an IT area of a corporation, the user knowledge, high-risk user activities. You know, I talked to some of these small to mid-sized businesses, you know, your employees don't have to have full access to the internet. They don't have to be able to surf everywhere all the time. System security, no firewalls or insufficient security, browsers, unpatched programs, no layers to security, or they're not using the bank security solutions. We have security solutions. Most financial institutions, if they don't, they should. Most of us have several layers of security that we offer, and you'd be surprised at how many companies will come in and say, that's just too much. I don't want to do the out-of-band thing. I don't want you to send me a text message. I don't want that extra layer. I'll sign whatever type of hold harmless agreement you want me to sign, but that's just too much. I don't want the added security. And I'll take the chance that my account will get compromised. Some of our best practices, we tell our customers, you know, that employee education, we do that at the bank. We try really hard to educate our employees. We do it through live training, online training. We send them out social engineering tests and email tests and all the time, just trying to keep that awareness going. I think that's the best thing you can do. Making sure everybody understands the risks and creates solutions to mitigate those risks. Don't open or click on links from unknown sources that are suspicious. We all know that. I walk around all the time, don't click, don't click, don't click. Just don't open it. My husband was kind enough to drive me here, and I think he hears me tell that to our kids all the time on the internet when they do happen to drag out our laptop. Don't click on it. Don't do that. Develop a security policy. If you have expectations of employees, develop it in a policy and have them sign it and acknowledge it at least annually so they know what the expectations are. Systems, I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm going to go over that. Most of the talks that I give, the individuals that I talk to are CFOs and business owners, so I have a different group here. So if there's an infection in your company, oftentimes what we hear when we have a company that's had a problem, a corporate account takeover of some kind, the CFO will say, or the person responsible for doing the internet banking or creating those files will say, I had an infection, I had a virus on my computer. The IT department had it for like an entire day, like a week ago. Which is great, okay, good, they fixed the problem, but notify the bank when that happens. So that's what we really want to get to the IT folks, is if you have somebody in your company that's got a problem and they have any type of access to financial stuff, get a hold of the bank so that we can take some precautions as well. Use the firewalls, encrypt the VPN, reliable security suites. We all know that. Block prohibited sites, block access to personal email. The last one, use a non-network standalone computer for online banking. That isn't always practical, especially in the small to mid-sized businesses, but it certainly is a best practice if it can be done. It only takes one company one time to lose $250,000 to say, well, boy, maybe having that extra laptop just to do internet banking is not a bad idea. All right, ransomware. I bring this up only because it doesn't affect financial records, it doesn't affect sensitive records, but the first place our small businesses call is their bank. We've gotten ransomware, our files are locked up, what do? Do we pay the ransom, do we not pay the ransom? And my first response is, well, how important are the files to you? If they're not that important, then I just forget about it and move on. Or when was the last time you backed up those files? The lesson learned here is let's back up our files every day, and then we don't have to worry about the ransomware. And train your employees to be careful when they're surfing and all of those types of things. I think we've all probably read about it. You can pay the ransom, and I think anymore the criminals are pretty good about giving you the key to open it back up. The FBI will tell you don't pay the ransom, but certainly a risk out there that we're seeing with our bank customers. But the biggest risk, the thing that I see at least 2 or 3 times a week, and there's nothing really that your financial institution can do to help. We try to educate our customers. We've seen this so much that we've actually developed a standard operating procedure at Bankers Trust for our treasury officers to help their corporate customers when this happens, is business email compromise. We can pretty much determine when an email comes in and it's fraudulent and it looks like it's coming from our customer requesting a wire transfer request. We can usually determine what those look like because the grammar's bad, or it just looks odd. And we have a standard operating procedure. We've had it for a long, long time, where if we get an email request for a wire transfer, we pick up the phone, we call the customer to verify it. Well, what the criminals have figured out is that if they can get inside that business and send a wire transfer request from one employee to another, and they can make it look like it's coming legitimately from one employee going to another, that employee will send that wire request to the bank thinking it's a legitimate request. And we see hundreds of thousands of dollars all the time leave the bank. And what's great about a wire transfer is it moves fast, and once it gets to the other end, it's available immediately. What's bad about a wire transfer is it moves fast, and once it gets to the other end, it's available immediately. And it's really hard. We have a 1% chance of calling back a wire transfer once it's gone. 1%. So we get a phone call, we need to do a wire request. Customer calls it in, it seems like a legitimate wire, they have their PIN, everything's authenticated, we send that wire only to get a call an hour later from that same customer. I should not have sent that $227,000. That email I received from our CFO or our CEO or whoever it was a fraudulent email, I didn't realize it, can you get the money back? I can try, I can really, really try. So what needs to happen inside the business is if one employee is sending an email request for a wire transfer to move money, they need to stop, like we do in our company, stop, look, think, call that other employee and make sure that wire request is legitimate, because we see business email compromise all the time. It can be an actual email compromise, or it can just be that email is spoofed. It can be either one, and employees are falling for it all the time. A lot of money is leaving this country, a lot of money is moving, and then it's just gone, because by the time we get a hold of that other financial institution, the individual on the other end, the money mule, has already come in, taken the money, and it's gone. And there's no obligation of the other financial institution to send that money back, none. So once it's gone, it's gone. So, and if it happens to go overseas, then we're completely out of luck. That is the end of my time. I wish I had longer, but those are the biggest threats we're seeing in the financial industry, and unfortunately I have to take off directly after this for another commitment. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jodi. We're going to take